This episode is brought to you by the American Society of Healthcare Engineering, optimizing healthcare facilities, and Brightly, a Siemens Company, software to create more secure, efficient, and compliant facilities. Welcome to Between the Lines with FGI, a podcast brought to you by FGI. In this podcast series, we invite you to listen in on casual conversations related to health and residential care, design, and construction. Joining us today is FGI's very own John Williams, Vice President of Content and Outreach and Chair of the 2026 Health Guidelines Revision Committee.
And also joining us today is Marissa Lamperis Kastrinos, FGI's very own brand new Director of Education. And as always, we're curious about the design of the healthcare environment and how codes and standards affect that. Also, once again, we're coming to you direct from Columbus, Ohio at the ASHE Healthcare Facilities Innovation Conference. We're really excited to be here, and it's been a great conference so far. Also, we have two fascinating attendees joining us today, don't we, Marissa?
We certainly do. Let's kick it off by talking a little bit about our first guest, Mark Mochel. Mark is a seasoned leader and innovator in healthcare facility management and is currently a strategic account executive at Brightly, a Siemens Company. With a degree in mechanical engineering from Purdue University and an MBA from the University of Michigan, Mark brings a unique cross-industry perspective to the challenges facing healthcare environments today. He's a passionate advocate for sustainable infrastructure.
Now, on to Jonathan Flannery. Jonathan brings over 35 years of healthcare engineering expertise to his role as a Senior Associate Director of Regulatory Affairs at ASHE, a division of the American Hospital Association. He leads advocacy efforts with federal agencies and code development organizations, shaping regulations that impact the healthcare physical environment. Jonathan also serves on multiple national code committees and teaches across the country on topics like healthcare, construction, life safety, and engineering fundamentals. And I personally have been in code hearings with Jonathan for hours upon hours upon hours.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, Jonathan and I have been in many long code hearings together. He's got a great perspective on the confluence of codes and operations within the built environment in healthcare. And I've also heard a lot about Mark, and I'm really excited to talk to him. He brings a lot of experience both from inside and outside the healthcare industry, which I always appreciate. So let's get ready to read between the lines with FGI. You ready to go, Marissa?
Yes, I am so ready. Jonathan, Mark, it is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Welcome, Jonathan and Mark, to Between the Lines with FGI. We are so thankful that you're here to talk about deferred maintenance. I'm really curious about the concept. I'm interested to find out what deferred maintenance means and how we can do it better.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yes.
Awesome. I love working together with everybody and talking about a very important topic that we've worked on for several years now.
Excellent. Well, let's get started. In your words, how do you define deferred maintenance?
So in my words, we use the phrase deferred maintenance to essentially explain the age of the infrastructure, and we assimilate that with infrastructure investment. So the proper term is deferred investment. What deferred maintenance really means is an accumulation of investment that perhaps should have been made to either update, renovate, or replace infrastructure, but either the funds weren't available or for whatever reason that investment was not made, which over time can compound and ultimately can then increase risk by having to recover those assets. I often use the car analogy. If we think about deferred investment, if we don't maintain the car properly, if we don't do the oil changes, if we don't do those basic things, it's going to age more quickly, and ultimately that has to be addressed. So it's about risk. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jonathan.
I'd also like to bring in the fact that it's really not just an investment, but it's a strategy. Many of us will take the time to save up over a few years to buy a new car. And we'll even take and invest in the vehicle through a loan and even pay interest on it because we want the new car. So the same happens with anything. I mean, we can talk about toasters, boilers, air handlers, whatever. It's a strategy you use combined with your maintenance efforts to extend the life of an item. Everything has what we call a useful life. And that's an average time span we put on something that tells us when we should be looking at replacing something. Infrastructure is equipment, it's mechanical, it wears out, it will break. As Mark mentioned, if we take and provide proper maintenance to that, we can take something that's expected to be around for 25 years. And I've actually extended boilers into 50 and 60 years and have them functioning just as well, if not better, than when they were originally installed. You can do that with this type of stuff. That's a strategy. That's just good investment in the facility.
It is not just investment in the building, the infrastructure, the things inside of the building. We're talking about patients here. The building is there to take care of the patient. And if the systems and the infrastructure is there and functioning properly, that reduces risks and provides better patient care.
Absolutely. And not only does it allow for better patient care, if I can take and not have to replace a boiler, I can reduce an impact to patient care for an extended period of time.
Right. And that money that you might have used to replace the boiler can be used for direct patient care.
Can be invested in a urology clinic or something else,
Yes.
a new service that improves the lives of our patients. And that's the vital strategy.
Jonathan, I appreciated the perspective. The definition of deferred maintenance that I focused on was kind of the negative context. We're not investing enough in the infrastructure, which can compound risk and ultimately could impact patient care. It's both a positive and a negative. I think what we're really talking about is that some level of investment over time is absolutely critical to patient care. If we manage and deploy that investment in a controlled way, the data shows if we make the right operational investment in the ongoing maintenance of our infrastructure, it will last longer, which will then reduce our future capital needs to replace those assets. So it is a strategy. Some organizations do it better than others. It's really about knowing what's going on in the building, understanding what investment is required to optimize that environment so that we don't put patients at risk. And that's a leadership discussion with the facility team, with the clinical team. You can go all the way through the hospital. Does that make sense,
Oh,
John,
absolutely.
to some of your questions for Marissa?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I look at it and hear both of you talk about it, I always put myself in the position of a critical access hospital facility
Sure.
manager because that's the hospital I grew up in and grew up around. The facility manager that I remember knew the hospital like the back of his hand and knew when that boiler was installed and when it was going to go bad, what creaks meant what inside of the building, and was just intrinsically able to understand how to keep this stack of plates balanced to keep the building afloat. When you scale that up and you have hundreds of thousands, millions of square feet, and the complexity of the infrastructure just blossoms, that complexity gets, just much harder for the facility managers.
That guy out in the critical access hospital, been there, done that. The challenge there is that within facilities, we strive and we really focus on or want to be that individual who can fix anything, make it go, still keep going, and duct tape and baling wire, man, we'll make it run. The issue there is
MacGyver. Right?
you got it. Yeah. The issue there, though, is there will be a day that duct tape and baling wire is not going to fix this. And you've got to be far enough out ahead of that to be able to provide a strategy and a replacement, et cetera, and to help your leadership understand the impact that'll be to patient care.
And you're seeing this happen now?
We're seeing a great example of this in the National Health System in England right now, where their facilities folks worked deferred maintenance to the point that it is now fallen apart around them.
Wow.
They're literally being required to shut down wings of hospitals because they can't run them right now safely and do the patient care.
Wow.
We don't want to go there.
Right.
That's not a good strategy.
Talk about direct impact to patients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So deferred maintenance is a strategy, but it's just one of many we need to implement. And making sure that we're coordinating this with our design engineers and the architects and the other people who are doing renovations. I mean, I've always jokingly said the definition of a hospital is a continuous renovation. We never stop renovating, but we've got to be able to coordinate those renovations in a good strategy where we can implement deferred maintenance processes.
Let me give you an example based on your comment. When you think about a large hospital, it's not one building. It's probably 10 buildings that have been kludged together over the years. So you often hear the 1978 tower and the 2003 building and all these things. And what that means is that the infrastructure of that hospital or that campus might have multiple different vintages of when it was installed. The best case example is if we're going to do a renovation of one wing, also go and look at the infrastructure. The best time to maybe upgrade or do work on some of the infrastructure is when the renovation is going on, and then look at the connected buildings. Is there something we can do here that while we're in here, let's fix a couple of other little things and turn it into a very positive and planned investment.
So we're not saying fix everything. Just be mindful and purposeful when you approach a new project. That's the best case scenario.
The worst case scenario, I actually was part of a pre-bid meeting for a hospital that was doing an addition of a new patient wing to an existing facility. The owner was very clear in stating this construction project is not about fixing the sins of the past. Do not include the existing infrastructure in any of your construction bid. That's not a good thing. The new patient wing ultimately needs to be tied into the existing energy plant.
Right.
So to say that we're not going to use this project to deal with the sins of the past, in my opinion, was an example of not understanding that the best time to address the sins of the past could have been while this additional construction project was going on. Now, that assumes there's unlimited budget, right? We all know we have to live within those things. But I'm really speaking to the culture. And I know Jonathan and I are very much aligned on this. It's about being transparent, being objective, and at least understanding that that infrastructure investment has to be considered. Does that make sense?
Of course. And what can you do as part of this new project to solve any existing compliance issues that you have as well?
Jonathan, you want to add to that?
Absolutely. One of the key things here is being able to have the vision, a master plan, and those kind of things that includes the current infrastructure. I've helped master plan multiple facilities. It's actually been a deal where we've looked to the future, always looking to what new services do we need, what new stuff, and we never looked at what we have and what happens with that.
And you're missing some potentially big infrastructure kind of opportunities there.
You know, when there is no electricity in the facility, there is no patient care. When the medical gases fail, patients are harmed. Those are the kind of things that we need to keep in mind as we're doing all those wonderful things and looking to the future and trying to improve our healthcare. You know, if you don't level set with what you have today and where you're at, it becomes very risky.
And as an authority having jurisdiction, we intrinsically understand that too, because we lived with these buildings for decades as well. We understand that systems degrade over time. And when we're in there doing our surveys and inspections, there's a compliance level that we hold folks to, but we understand that there are things that may need to wait on that next renovation to either get fixed or be brought up to an appropriate level of compliance to maintain patient safety.
The real skill in that is being able to have that vision, to be able to really understand the intricacies of how that ties together and impacts. When do we really want to look at, you know, redoing our generators, redoing the switch gear, which that's a major impact to the facility. So, you know, making sure that's part of the strategy, the overall strategy, becomes extremely important.
Well, I love the way you teed that up, John. It is perfectly acceptable and actually desirable to make the decision. Okay, we know we need to replace X, Y, or Z or upgrade X, Y, or Z. We also know we have a renovation scheduled maybe. So making the decision proactively, that's a perfectly valid and good business decision. And what it ultimately requires is that all the cards are on the table, all the data's on the table, it's facilities, it's clinicians, it's administrators, it's the C-suite. Everybody's looking at the same cards. That's a good scenario. I often say to people, are you managing your facility or is your facility managing you? And I think what Jonathan and I are both advocating for, we know that budgets are not unlimited. We know that we can't do everything that we want to do all the time. So let's at least have a real conversation with leadership so everybody's part of making that decision. You see what I mean? So maybe we're not going to upgrade those generators this year. Maybe we're going to wait for 2 years to do that. As long as everybody understands the risks associated with that and the resources are made available to it to ensure that the existing generators are going to be compliant, we're going to do all those things. That's a management decision. That's a business decision. But what we don't want to do is ignore it and then deal with it after the fact.
Yet sometimes we have to. So a great story. I came into a facility, and even prior to interviewing for it, I walked the facility. So you can tell this was a long time ago, before 9/11, and walked around the facility. And I noticed while I was walking around that the vacuum system down in the bowels of the basement was in trouble. I mean, I could hear it just wasn't working well.
Mm-hmm.
So right after I got hired, I sat down with my boss and I said, hey, look, we need to replace the vacuum system. I've already got some estimates, et cetera. It's going to cost about $100,000 to do this. Oh, we ain't got money like that. Are you crazy? So I explained to him the risk. If that goes down, we lose surgery. You need to understand. And we lose dental. Both. They're both gone. Well, let me see what we can do. We'll work on it. But I don't think I can get more than 6 months out of this thing. It wasn't 6.5 months later, and the vacuum system failed. Now, I failed in the fact that I didn't keep my boss up to date that we saw that this was an issue continuing to progress. To replace those vacuum pumps cost me over $300,000 instead of $100,000, so 3 times the cost. And I had to put in a system that was almost twice as large as I really needed because it was the only one I could get over the weekend.
Because you're in a scenario now
Exactly.
where you
do it.
don't have a contractor on site. You've got to buy
what's
equipment
there
at a premium, right?
and get someone to come in and put it in, and it's got to be done now because guess what? Surgery had to be up again as soon as we could get it.
Mm-hmm. And you have a potential compliance issue there as well.
Absolutely.
If you had a surveyor walking through that weekend without a functioning vacuum system, there would be questions. And a lot of times I think the citation itself can put you in that cycle of, well, we've got to fix it now because we have a citation and a time clock ticking.
Well, and again, the strategy, the fact that we didn't have the 100,000 at the time that we were looking at it was a reality. I didn't take the opportunity to continue to remind my boss about it and to come up with a plan to where we could get the 100,000 so we could do it in a scheduled process. So that was a failure on my part. But again, deferred maintenance is a strategy. We could have used that 6 months to really work a plan to get some money to do whatever we needed to do and replaced it before it failed. That's where we as facility folks really need to be looking at that. As designers and engineers and architects, when we go through, you can't see the forest because of the trees. So an outside person coming in can see things that, as a facility manager, I may be overlooking.
So you've mentioned a good amount of things that can go wrong. Tell us about a time when things went well and what contributed to that.
Probably, I've got 2 great experiences that I've had over my career. We were looking at a master plan to increase the size of our labor and delivery within a facility. And we took that opportunity to look at replacing our boilers. And I had a crew that had really maintained the boilers extremely well. So when the design engineer came in and looked at them, she realized that we don't need to replace these. Let's just take and add a secondary boiler, hot water boiler, so that one, it's more efficient. Two, it could provide additional redundancy for the labor and delivery unit. And so therefore we saved a huge amount of money by not replacing two big boilers and just adding a smaller third hot water boiler so that they didn't have the wear and tear on them as they were going, but also to allow us to clean them out and take them down offline for an extended period of time to really work on them. The other one, the air handler situation, where I had some really, really old air handlers and the fans were totally shot. They had to be taken care of. And our thought was that we'd just replace them, the entire air handler. Well, again, the design engineer realized that they were built much better than anything I could buy at that time. Because, they were already 20, 30 years old, and the way they were constructed back then, they were built. They were a room. They weren't a piece of metal thrown together. So instead of replacing those entire units, what we did is we pulled the fans out and put in fan walls. And that gave us a ton of redundancy, made it much easier to vary the system, the amount of air coming out of it, so we could do setbacks, all kinds of stuff. And it gave us, not only did we save a lot on the project itself, but it provided us the opportunity to save utility money in the future. So
when we think about codes and compliance, when you go in and make a change to an existing facility, the question always comes up, well, how much of that system are you bringing up to code compliance? There's all of these requirements around pressurization and those allowances for setbacks, which give you an option to use the building in a way that makes more sense. So that becomes kind of a compliance conversation too with the AHJ. Mark, you were talking about bringing your entire C-suite and your medical team in there to make those decisions. How do you folks see involving your AHJ in some of these kind of compliance discussions?
I think to me, this is a cultural discussion. What I mean by that is being transparent within the health system or the hospital, alignment as best we can between all the different departments in the C-suite. But when I deal with AHJs, again, it comes back to the data, back to transparency, to the best of our ability, reach out to AHJs. Am I interpreting this correctly? Can you help me? Some of my best resources in the industry are AHJs. Why do I go to them? Because they know what they're talking about, right? From a code and compliance perspective. I just think that we've got to stop looking at compliance as a punitive thing. I think we got to be open and honest about what's going on because we're all in this together. We're all trying to serve the patient. If I need an answer to a question, I'm going to call Jonathan. And John, now that I've met you, I'm going to be giving you a call sometime when I need information. But I want to play offense, not defense. Let's work together to ultimately make the environment of care a better place.
And that's true on both sides of the table. And it's a round table, so there's many sides to it, right? That culture of compliance, that culture of quality and seeing how we can work together on this common goal. Not only is it the facility manager and the C-suite, it's the AHJ as well.
Absolutely.
And understanding what does compliance really mean and understanding how we can get to better patient safety if we look at it in a constructive way.
So what we're talking about here is really about relationships.
Right.
If all I ever do is show up at the AHJ and complain or show up and say, why aren't you getting my inspection done?
Yeah, you're my favorite person then.
Exactly. That's not a good relationship. I am a true believer that you don't ever get quality time without quantity time. You have to develop a relationship with time. Spending time helping the AHJ out, just meeting and spending some time together. Develop a relationship. While I was working at a hospital, I invited the fire marshal to come in and to spend time at our facility. So they came over on a monthly basis and ran our stairways. And we'd put a notice out to the employees. Firefighters will be here Tuesday, going up and down the stairways. Don't worry, it's just their practice. And I wanted that because, one, they were spending time in my building.
Right.
They got to know my building so that if there ever was a fire, they would know the building. That was vital to patients there. So, but that developed into a great relationship where they actually found something that me and my staff had walked by for years. Hey, why is there a big hole in the wall there? That's a great question. We'd had a damper that had failed. I went back, it was like 2 years ago. So the electrical room was overheating. So to solve the problem, they pulled the damper out.
As you do.
As you
Yeah.
do, because you got to keep the electrical room cool enough, Well, we never put the damper back. So, and that'd been like that for 2 years. If that room had ever caught fire, we'd have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
So developing those relationships is so important.
Well
And-
said, Jonathan.
And I understand nobody has enough money, enough staff, and nobody will ever have enough time. So it's about prioritizing and strategizing relationships. And that sounds bad, but you've got to work on those things and develop real relationships with people.
Yep.
When the utility manager for the community came to my door at 2 a.m. to let me know they just hit a water line that served the hospital, I knew we were in the right space. Now, one, he knew where I lived. He knew where to come get me. But to let me know that as soon as he could, that was awesome,
Yeah.
So those are the kind of relationships that I always wanted to develop and have with the AHJs.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. In the context of, how do we increase collaboration? And the first one is somewhat dependent on the character and the integrity of the folks in the room. That's a leadership quality. That's the soft skill, if you will. It's hard to teach somebody how to be collaborative. I kind of highlighted what may be a typical perspective. It's PDC versus facility operations, or it's us versus them. It's you're an authority having jurisdiction, so you're the enemy, right? And I do think there can be some of that in healthcare. It's us versus them, and that's where I think we as leaders, each one of us, we have to put aside our perspective and seek that goal alignment, and that's easy in healthcare. It's about the patient. So we're all on the same team. If all roads lead to the patient, the environment of care, et cetera, the clinical outcomes, it shouldn't be hard to collaborate.
Very well said, Mark. It was so great having you both here today for a wonderful conversation. Now, if there was one thing you wanted the listeners to take away from this, what would it be?
Oh, thank you, Marissa. And John, thank you. I've really enjoyed the conversation that we're having today. The key takeaway for me, I want to go back to relationships, to collaboration, and my dream for the world. I want to take this potential gap between AHJs, between our planning, design, and construction teams, our architects, our engineers, and our facility operators, and really emphasize this collaboration. I would love to see us focus on operational handover. We design it, we build it, we commission it, and we hand it over. In my perfect world, there's no such thing as an operational handover. We've already built in our maintenance management procedures. As we built the building, we built our operating procedures, we built our plans so that it's a seamless transition. Now, if I may, for our architect and engineering friends on the line, the next time you're in a planning meeting, reach out to the facility leader in the room, ask him what he or she wants in the building. And if they're not in the room, politely ask if you can speak with the facility operators and get their input. I think you'd be surprised at the positive collaboration that could come out of that. So thank you all for listening today.
Marissa and John, thanks again. I believe we're just getting started.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure that there were several of your listeners that when they saw the topic come up of deferred maintenance, they're wondering, why is FGI talking about deferred maintenance? This is so vital though. And really appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. Deferred maintenance, it's kind of like that black sheep. It's got a bad name. People have always seen it as a very negative thing. I see it as a very positive strategy that needs to be implemented. If there is any time that somebody should be considering deferred maintenance, it is now. We are going to see in the next 3 to 5 years a major impact to the capital that healthcare has. We know it's coming. Therefore, now is the time to really start building that strategy and working that opportunity.
Yeah.
If we don't, our patients will take the brunt of the impact. And that is wrong. As Mark has said multiple times, it is truly about risk management, making sure that you're providing the proper oversight and maintenance and management of your systems so that you're not putting patients at risk, but also saving the capital budget for that which is most needed. Because if you're not doing that, I really fear for your livelihood in the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow, definitely something to keep an eye on over the next couple of years. And probably a good place to end this episode. Thanks again, Jonathan and Mark, for being here on Between the Lines with FGI.
Agreed. And thank you all for joining us for another episode. Now, if you have an idea for a future episode, or if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, go ahead and get in touch with us by sending us an email over at podcast@fgiguidelines.org.
Upcoming topics include what's new in the 2026 hospital outpatient and residential versions of the FGI codes. We've got one on the safety risk assessment and more. So again, if you'd like to have us mention your name at the beginning of an episode, reach out to us about sponsorship.
Many thanks to Neil Kane and the Neil Kane Trio for the use of his song Skip to My Lou from the album of the same name.
And before we leave, Marissa, I want to mention that we have a new learning management system, and if you want to learn more about the codes and standards, I would really encourage everyone to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. If you go to fgiuniversity.org, you will find a multitude of brand new educational content that will help you master the FGI codes and guidelines. Now, make sure to sign up for our emails to get the latest on events and new courses on the FGI University website.
All right, join us next time as we go Between the Lines with FGI. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
All right, how often do you clean out your gutters? You're in Florida.
Gosh.
Do you have to?
We certainly do. And John, that's one of the many reasons I'm married. So I'm not the one to clean the gutters, but who knows? Maybe someday I'll be up on that roof.